Today's show, Star Wars Episode 4. Wait for it.
Star Wars? Yes!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Devil's in the Details. I'm BD, and thank God it's Friday. In 1977, I was a 9-year-old kid who had no idea how good he had it. My family was never, by any means, a rich family. My parents worked very hard to be able to raise 3 kids. And during the summers, we would go camping at a trailer park. My folks bought a trailer and off we'd go, every summer, the day after school let out. We would spend the entire summer out there. It saved my parents a lot of money to be able to shut down the house completely and pay the bare minimums on utilities. And I loved it. It was great growing up that way, having 2 addresses. I had my all-year-long school buddies, then I had my summer friends, who I couldn't wait to get back to every month of June. Now, my birthday's in July, and every year my mom would ask me just before the big day would roll around, she'd say, BD, what would you like for your birthday this year? And in the summer of 1977, well, there was only one answer to that. I want to go see Star Wars. She looked at me and said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Go see your father. So I did. I told him what I wanted for my birthday, and he said, okay, hop in the car. Now, of course, there were no theaters in the vicinity of the trailer park land, but there was a drive-in theater, and off we went. Now, you have to realize that I live in a French province, so the first time I ever saw Star Wars, it was dubbed in French. But that really didn't matter because I still left that drive-in theater looking like this. And Star Wars was such a giant smash success that even by the time summer was over and we got back to our suburban home, it was still in theaters, so I got to go see it with all my friends in English. And every time I came out of that theater, I still looked like this. Star Wars had different release dates in different countries, but in Canada, it came out on June 24th, 1977, and it quickly rose to the top of the box office and almost instantly became a worldwide pop culture hit. Everyone in the world was talking about Star Wars. Every conversation shifted towards it. So, what do you want to do tonight?
What would Vader do?
Star Wars was absolutely everywhere. George Lucas had the foresight of retaining control of licensing and merchandising rights before A New Hope was even released. And it wasn't called A New Hope until 1981. Its original title was actually The Star Wars. Anyways, the merchandising seeped into everybody's everyday life. It was Star Wars everything. Cups, t-shirts, shoes, backpacks, watches, hats, bed sheets, underwear, ties, bottle openers, enema sets. Enema sets? Trading cards, lunchboxes, and toys. Oh my god, the toys. Every single kid I knew had Star Wars toys, including me. Christmas and your birthday couldn't come fast enough. Back then, we didn't have the internet. If you wanted to find out more about something, it was either in print or in the form of either a televised entertainment show or documentary. And that's when the spark for my love of cinema was ignited. I had millions of questions and not enough answers. How had they created a galaxy so far, far away that I could relate to completely? The key to that was in the story itself, a story as old as time. Lucas didn't create the story of the princess and the White Knight, he simply modernized it, rethemed it, if you will. Even he admits that some of the core inspirations for the Star Wars story were based on Akira Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress, combined with the Flash Gordon series dating as far back as the 1930s. Time to dive into some details here. In 1977, there was little to no CGI the filmmakers could rely on. So almost everything you see in the original film before Lucas went back and, well, we all know what he did, don't we?
Yes, I bet you have.
A lot of the film's original concepts had to be reworked and tweaked to be able to be used practically. Like the land speeder, for example, which is completely different from the original concept to finished design. You certainly would not have been able to fit Ben, C-3PO, R2, and Luke into what the speeder looked like in its initial form. The iconic Millennium Falcon turned out to be nothing like it was originally sketched. The Falcon's original design was actually what eventually became the Blockade Runner. And the Blockade Runner itself had a little bit of controversy attached to it because at the time there was a show in England called Space 1999, and the producers felt that Lucasfilm had copied their design. After finding out, Lucas simply said about the Falcon, "Flatten it. Make it look like a burger." The Death Star was another prop that had to be built, and while researching the original Death Star prop, I came across a few conflicting stories about its creation. Lorne Peterson, who worked on the film, did have this to say about it.
There was a half sphere about this Big Maid that we painted that gray, off-white gray color, and then scratched through and had a stage light behind it. And that particular model was so funky, and I think someone dropped it at one time and had a crack, and we threw it in the trash. And somebody went through our trash at nighttime, and eventually I think it's in a museum in Washington now.
The visuals that you do see of the Death Star in the film are in large part matte paintings. One of the techniques that were used in the film was stop motion animation. Growing up as a kid, I was in love with claymation, watching films like Clash of the Titans, Jason and the Argonauts, and of course, King Kong. And so I was completely mesmerized when I got a glimpse of the chessboard on the checkered table inside the Millennium Falcon, where the chess pieces were animated and alive. The classic warplanes designed for the space battles, the X-Wing fighter versus the TIE fighter. The X-Wing fighter's body was based on dragsters, that's why the long noses. And another important part of their design was for them to look weathered, beaten, dirty, rebellious, as opposed to clean, slick, and shiny. The TIE fighter concept, although looked a little simpler in design, was done on purpose. It had to look more military. It was a round ball with a spindle through it leading to two flat panels. The entire ship was hexagon-shaped. Originally, Darth Vader's TIE fighter wasn't any different than any of the other TIEs, but they quickly realized that if they didn't differentiate his ship, how would the audience know which one he was in during the climactic space battle? The models for both types of ships were expertly crafted with an astonishing amount of detail which was necessary for them to be believable. They had to look and feel huge to be convincing in front of the bright lights and cameras. The sounds from the film are firmly ingrained in my memory, and it was interesting to find out how some of them were created. Ben Burtt describes what he used to create Chewbacca's voice.
I collected lots of bear sounds, as well as walruses and lions and badgers and sick animals and domestic, all sorts of things. And out of all these recordings, you could extract little bits of sound.
And of course, there's Darth Vader, voiced by the legendary James Earl Jones. Vader's breathing was created by using scuba diving equipment. Then there are the lightsabers. Almost everyone in the world knows what this sound is. It was interesting to find out that the lightsaber sound was actually discovered by accident.
I was carrying a microphone across the room between recording. I was recording something over here, and I walked over here with the microphone, passed by a television set which was on the floor, which was on at the time, without the sound turned up, but the microphone passed right behind the picture tube, and as it did, this particular microphone produced an unusual hum. It picked up transmission from the television set.
Another one of my favorite sounds in the film came from the laser blasters. I found the story of their creation also very interesting. Choosing John Williams as the composer for the film was one of Lucas's most brilliant choices. Hearing the opening title sequence to any of the Star Wars films immediately excites any fan of the franchise. I gotta go watch it. I'll be back. You're still here? Great. Another thing that I realized as I got older, obviously, was that Lucas had cast a bunch of unknown actors. Save for Alec Guinness, of course, but Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford were pretty much plucked from obscurity. Star Wars was their launchpad, propelling them into extremely successful careers. Now, who could talk about Star Wars without mentioning our beloved droid C-3PO, played by Anthony Daniels, and R2-D2, played by Kenny Baker? Okay, granted, Baker didn't have any lines, but he did have to operate some of the controls inside of R2-D2, mainly the dome before it was upgraded to be controlled remotely. Both actors were super troopers, suiting up in full costumes under the blistering Tunisian sun. Anthony Daniels did have this to say about the production.
I had this terrible leaning board, a kind of medieval thing with arms, that allowed you to recline at about 70 degrees and was very little use at all because all the weight still went down to your ankles, and it was like walking around with a great barbell all day, by the end of the day, wow.
And although Kenny Baker had no lines, R2-D2 still needed a voice.
I learned to combine my voice with electronic sounds, which I would play on a keyboard of a synthesizer. And in combining the two, I was able to get a sense of performance out of the character.
Another factoid, if you will, is that Kenny Baker and Anthony Daniels are the only two actors to be in all 6 original films. I consider myself lucky to have been able to have Star Wars be a part of my life ever since its inception. It's wonderful to have been able to share my passion with so many people, and I can't wait to see what Star Wars holds for all of us in the future. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and in supporting us. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Today's episode was brought to you by Slightly Light. Not that one, that one. I'll see you guys next Friday.
La guerre des étoiles, avec Mark Hamill.
Je suis Luke Skywalker, je viens à votre secours.
Il recrute des nains maintenant dans les commandos.
Harrison Ford.
Il manque de conversation, ce type-là.
Luke, on va avoir la visite.
On n'a pas dû tourner où il fallait.
Carrie Fisher.
Bonne chance.